Hi, I'm Doug Goldstein from the Goldstein on Gelt show. Today I interviewed CPA David Trahair. Now, David is a international best-selling author. One of the things that's interesting about his point of view and mine is that he is a little bit scared about the markets. He says that people, instead of focusing on how much money they can build in their portfolio, which, well, quite frankly, is very exciting for people who are in the investment field, he's not that exciting. He says focus first on how much you need, and, well, frankly, I agree with him on that. And he says you've got to watch out for risk first and foremost. Now, I think there are different ways of looking at risk, and you're going to hear David and I discuss that in the upcoming interview here on the show. If you have any thoughts about the interview or about your own investments, get in touch with me at goldsteinongelt.com. I'm Doug Goldstein, your host. Enjoy the interview.
You're listening to certified financial planner Doug Goldstein, host of the Goldstein on Gelt show, www.goldsteinongelt.com.
Okay, I'm very excited to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show David Trahair. He is a CPA. He is a national best-selling author. He's a financial columnist. His background is in taxation, but he realized not so long ago that he had a knack for teaching people about personal finance. A number of books with really great-sounding names, like Smoke and Mirrors, Financial Myths That Will Ruin Your Retirement Dreams. And I also like the title, The Procrastinator's Guide to Retirement, How You Can Retire in 10 Years or Less. Dave, are you on the 10 years or less track for retiring?
Yes, I am, Doug. I'm going to be 59 this year. Although, I don't really totally plan to retire. I don't have a drop dead date of 65 and I want to stop and do nothing. I hope to continue doing part of what I do now and hopefully earn some money doing that during retirement. So I don't really have a specific date in mind.
I admire that. Good for you. But there are enough people out there listening to us today who want to retire. How much do people actually need?
That's a really good question, and I often get that question posed to me. The problem is there is no one right answer. Everybody's different. I like to say that each of our personal financial situations are as individual as our fingerprints. Everybody's different. So, for example, relying on a rough rule of thumb, like you'll need approximately 70% of your pre-retirement earnings to maintain your standard of living after you retire, and that's how you compute how much you'll need to save, is dangerous because there's a chance that 70% might be right, but it might be the totally wrong answer for you. So you get to retirement either having saved way too little or possibly saved way too much. It's not an optimal way of determining how much you need to retire.
I want to dig into this because I think you're trying to weasel out of the question. The question was how much you need to retire, and you're saying everyone's different, so everyone needs a different amount. So I accept that. Tell me, how do you figure it out? How can you figure out what you need?
Well, you figure it out because in my books, I give away Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Like, for instance, the one in the Smoke and Mirrors book is called the Retirement Optimizer. So it asks you all the questions about your life in terms of what you make now, what do you want to replace after you retire, and what other retirement sources are you eligible for, like in Canada, it's Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security. What do you think inflation's going to be? And it will project out your income from the retirement savings based on your current situation. And you can see, looking into the future, whether you're saving too much or too little, and do a calculation working back, which is why I love Excel. You can use a function in Excel called Goal Seek that can work backwards given how much is in your retirement savings now and what your objectives are. That'll give you a figure. Here's how much you will need to retire in your specific case. And the second advantage of that is that they can change their answers as things change in their life. So my answer is I can't give you a number, but I can give you a spreadsheet that will allow you to calculate the number. Again, any financial planner probably has similar spreadsheets to that. I'm sure you have something like that as well.
Yeah, I like that model.
Does that answer it?
Now we're on the same page, okay?
Yeah.
I wasn't calling you a weasel. I was just saying you were, working around my question a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a politician now.
You'll answer the question when asked.
I will eventually.
But I actually like your answer because I think the important part of it is that people need to realize it's not about getting as rich as you can. It's about figuring out, and I don't want to bore people with the two words I'm going to say, but it's about figuring out the cash flow that you need, how much you want to spend every month,
Definitely.
how much your income is, and then you would figure out how much money you need.
Definitely. One of my books is called Cash Cows, Pigs, and Jackpots, the simplest personal finance strategy ever. And the whole theme of that book is cash flow. It says, forget the net worth statement. The net worth statement is a quick and dirty little calculation of where you stand at any point in time, but it has very little to do with your life, with your cash flows, and it can be misleading to focus on your net worth because it motivates you to do things like borrow to invest and hope the stock market's going to make you rich without considering the cash flow implications and the risk to your cash flow implications of that. So I'm with you 100%. Cash flow is king.
Let's dive into this risk thing also. I know this is an issue that you bring up a lot because there's a real temptation for people to get into the stock market because they see the potential. But you talk more about the risk.
Yeah.
How do you see the balance between the risk and the possibility to actually grow your wealth?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And again, it comes down to the individual we're talking about. For example, I am an ultra conservative accountant. So until recently, my retirement savings in Canada, it's called the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, was 100% fixed income, just guaranteed investment certificates, just savings vehicles that are making me about 2%, because I hate the thought of losing money. And, when we went through the latest crash, 2008, 2009, many people in Canada and the US lost approximately 50% of the value of their equities from June of 2008 to March of 2009. That would cause me to lose sleep at night. And while historically, going back over the last 50 years, the quote stock market has done better than fixed income products, there is no guarantee that in your life, in my life, in the listeners' lives, the stock market will be kind to them given how much time they've got from now until they're going to need that money. So risk is a huge issue, and it needs to be something that people need to think about, and also think about when something happens, and then maybe revise their ability to accept risk. A lot of people, after they lost half the value of their stocks, then said, oh, maybe I am more risk averse than I thought. It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, that's the big risk. We're talking with Dave Trahair, who is a CPA. He's actually based in Canada, but that's okay because he's got wisdom that people around the world are using. As a best-selling author, he's written a number of books. He's been talking to us about how much someone needs to retire, and he pointed out a really important fact that it's not about just getting as rich as you can be. It's about figuring out how much money you need on a monthly basis to pay the bills for the rest of your life, and then seeing how to actually get that income for the rest of your life. And Dave, you made a very good point about not investing in the stock market because it's not guaranteed. And you gave a good example of what really happened to a lot of people, which is they went in with all good intentions to stay invested for the long term. And they said, yeah, I'm okay. I have the tolerance for risk that I need. And it's really easy to say when the market's going up. But as soon as it went down, and then it went down more, and then more, and it looked like the world was going to come to an end, they said, oh, maybe this isn't for me. And a lot of those people sold out at the very, very bottom. So it's not just a question of statistically that it's a good idea to be in the stock market, because we can show people on paper why it probably makes sense to have money in the stock market. But for so many people, they're just not able to, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the oven. And that's okay. And what you're proof of, or the point you're making, is you don't need the stock market. There are other ways to actually manage your money in fixed income. So my question to you is, because you talk about being able to retire or developing a plan to retire in 10 years, if you don't grow your portfolio enough, how can you have enough money to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two components to growing the portfolio. It's the amount of money you put in and the rate of return that you generate on that portfolio. And I think the problem that a lot of people are in is they have hardly any money saved. They're spending more than they make. They're in debt. There is nothing to put into their portfolio, or a very small amount. And they're hoping for some amazing investment advisor to come out of somewhere and guarantee them a 10 to 15% rate of return on their portfolio with no risk. This is how they're going to make their dreams come true. And unfortunately, and I guess I'll be the one to tell people if they don't already know that, there is no such thing as a guaranteed rate of return of 10 or 15% or even 8 or 10%. There is a potential rate of return like that, and historically there have been many periods of time where the stock market has provided that, but there is no guarantee. In fact, anybody who promises somebody a high rate of return, a guaranteed high rate of return, is probably running some kind of Ponzi scheme. It's selling this idea that there's guaranteed rate of return, and they just spend all the money. So
watch out when people tell you things that sound too good to be true.
Exactly.
But someone like you is talking about retiring early, perhaps. What's the trick?
Well, the honest truth is there really is no trick. And I think you and I will be similar in this thinking. My Main recommendation to people when it comes to personal finances is to track their spending, is to use some program. There's a free program called mint.com, for example. Track their spending so that they can see where their money is flowing currently. Once they see where it's going, it's easier for them to attack the bigger areas where they may be wasting money or where they could make a decision and reduce that cash outflow, because they've got to balance their budget so that eventually they get to the point where they're bringing in more after tax and other deductions that they spend. It's the only way, barring a lottery win or an inheritance, that they're going to crank up their retirement savings. So if they're starting later on in life, say at 55 with a very small amount of savings, the key is over the next 10 years to get their finances under control, get their cash flow under control. So there is a significant amount, hopefully, of money going into their portfolio. And then step number 2 is have it managed effectively. Find a professional financial planner that charges reasonable fees and provides a reasonable return in most cases. So it's a combination of the two, money put in plus a good rate of return.
Yeah, I'm going to say hooray on both of those, but obviously I agree with you on the second one. But on the first one also, it's so important because people just don't save, right? If you don't put aside enough money, that is probably the number one determining factor if you're going to be financially successful, which is how much money are you actually saving? Hey, Dave, I see that we're out of time, but I know that you have a lot of really good ideas for people. So in the last few seconds, tell me, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Well, they can just go to my website, which is my name, trahair.com. That'll detail the books. If they wish to purchase a book, they can do that through there, and the courses that I currently give. Appreciate that.
Okay, we will put a link to that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Dave Trahair, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Check out all of Doug's money ideas at goldsteinongelt.com. Doug specializes in helping people who live outside the United States handle their U.S. investment accounts. If you have a question that you would like answered on the air or off, contact Doug at his website or send him an email to doug@profile-financial.com.